Hello, hello. Welcome.
Hello.
Another
Good
hump
morning
day
for
coming.
me. Afternoon for some of you. Evening for some
Evening
of
for
you.
others. Hello,
Yes.
hello. So we're going to jump straight into the do's and don'ts. We can get on to your questions and start just chatting. So quickly, let's jump over to that.
Yes.
So be nice, respectful, constructive. Do not post anything. I feel like I'm getting feedback from someone.
Not me.
Testing. Yeah, that was from you, Roman.
Oh.
Be nice, respectful, constructive in the chat. Don't post anything rude, so on and so forth. Don't advertise, don't spam, none of that stuff. Harassment will not be tolerated. You'll be blocked from here and other places. And do have a good time. My name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter community leader, CTO at Dev Angels London, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Randall.
I'm Randall Schwartz. I am a Flutter Google developer expert, which means I theoretically can answer most of the questions you have, although Simon does a much better job. So we usually let him ramble on about questions. And I'm also the question magician, which means that if you're in the live chat today, and why aren't you if you're not, don't be listening to this later. You come on the live show, please. But if you have a question, put Q : in front of it in the chat. We will pick that up and put it in our queue. So the letter Q to the word Q. And we'll get to it. If you don't put a Q in front of it, I don't think it's a question for us. I figure it's some chat you guys are doing amongst yourselves. So be sure to put your Q there.
Roman.
Can you guys hear me well now?
Yes, brilliant.
Awesome, great. Say hi, everybody. I am Roman Jaquez. I am a Flutter GDE lead organizer at GDG Lawrence, also a GDG mentor for the Northeast. Happy to be here as always, sharing with greats in Flutter, such as Simon and Randall, filling in for Scott as well. So just looking forward to the questions.
Oh shucks.
Where is Scott? Simon.
Yeah, so Scott can't make it today, so that's the answer.
That's
to that
it.
one. Don't forget.
But wait, before we start, we need to celebrate a milestone in our community. Again, the amazing Randall. Happy belated birthday. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
We need some animations. Where's that? Where's those animations?
I'll just do this. Yes. Quickly make an animation there, Roman. It's time. Go fast.
That's true. Again, to many more long life and health to you, Randall.
I hope so. And as we were saying in the pre-show, I might as well repeat this now. From a European way of writing dates, this was 22/11/22, which is, palindromic, right? And that's the only time in my lifetime it'll be like that. Not only that, I was born in 61 and I'm 61 years old, which again is the only time in my lifetime that'll happen. So that was a really magical day yesterday.
Only engineers can be excited about these kind of things.
Yeah. Well, the US 11/22/11 was my symmetric date. That was 11 years ago. So yeah. So there. That's enough. Go. Oh, we got cues. We have cues coming in.
Awesome.
Yeah, already.
All right. So I was going to just mention actually before we get going here, and it's quickly
the Flutter release.
Yeah. So someone forgot to mute their phone. So whilst he's so now,
he's new. He'll learn.
Just now, 12 minutes ago, Flutter 3.3.9 just dropped, and as you can see, there's two major fixes here, two hot fixes. Fix when using private variable setters and mixins on dark web, and type parameter nullability performing incorrectly in factory constructors. Interesting enough that these are the two issues here. So you can obviously just follow the links from the announcements board. But this one was interesting because it's named class that with generic that extends another class causes core dump and unexpected memory. It was like null issue. But I do love it when we have names. But yeah. So
the other one was important though.
The VM AOT issue. So the other one, private variable setters and mixins on dark web.
Yeah, this one was important because it actually broke Riverpod and stopped my development with my clients, which was really annoying. So the team all got together, everybody worked together. Remy and the team figured out kind of what was triggering this. And then the Dart core team understood finally what was going on and fixed it all. But it was a really weird case of mix-ins and stuff. And I learned some new syntax too, something about being able to use an assignment operator on a type def that had a mix-in as part of the right-hand side. Very weird syntax. Never seen it before. And that's what was broken.
Interesting enough, I actually had an issue that I've been trying, I can't replicate. And it only seems that I can replicate. Well, I have an issue with the client code base, so I can't share it. But basically, Dart Web fails to initialize a late final field. Just doesn't assign it a value when it's meant to. It literally has a line. It assigns it a value when you on like late final blah equals this, right? And when you first access it, it should be assigning the final, and it's not. But it only happens in this one set of exact circumstances, and then because I can't replicate it in a separate Dart example or a separate Flutter example, it's really hard for the team to chase down. And hopefully, I can spend some more time trying to figure that one out. And we have spammers. This is not good.
Where's the timeout button? I know it's here somewhere.
Reporting them as well as spammers.
There we go. All right. Sorry. Behind the scenes.
Anyway, so that was that. Let's. I mean, is there anything anyone else wants to bring up? What's happened this week for you guys apart from belated birthdays and so on? Roman, what have you been up to?
Yeah, just again cranking at work, building a bunch of apps. I'm actually, again, like I mentioned, I work at Philips. We do, I work in the medical field, and I've been introducing Flutter, as part of our daily or actually our default UI framework. So it's been great. We've adopted it in the team. Everybody, morale is really high. Everybody's really happy. And have a couple of announcements to make at the end of this year when it comes to adopting Flutter in the medical field, developing applications. Very robust. Actually connecting to devices and whatnot is going to be pretty exciting. So that's what's for me. And actually today, now Randall, yes, you can join tonight. I'm going to be doing again my usual live streaming. Flutter live coding.
You promised. You
Yes,
promised. You promised this time.
Tonight,
okay.
I'm gonna be releasing.
Okay, tonight.
Tonight I'm gonna be releasing the casual game that I've been building for the past 12 weeks. I'm gonna be releasing it for the Google Play Store tonight, live. So talk about nerves and things going wrong. Yes, everything will happen tonight. So please make sure.
I'm waiting for that, just like account banned, like live on stream. You're like, what?
Yes. Looking forward to the fiasco, but hey, we learned together, and we're gonna have a lot of fun just breaking things and making things happen. So yeah.
So where can they find you for that later?
Yes, let's drop the link on the chat. If you guys don't mind, I'm gonna be dropping the link to the YouTube live stream for tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're gonna be releasing the Skipping Frog casual game that I've been building. We're gonna be publishing live to the Google Play Store. So yes.
Oops.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I like an idiot. I clicked the link by mistake.
Oh, you clicked the link.
Oh,
apparently it doesn't open a new tab. I've found that one there. So that'll go out in the there you go. That goes out in the live stream now.
Awesome.
So yeah, so don't tap on it now. It's open a new tab for later. There you go.
Yeah, and your artwork is amazing, by the way, and people should know this when they're tuning into the show maybe for the first time tonight. You did all the illustrations and stuff for this
everything
well.
From scratch.
Oh, incredible!
Yes. Not advised, but yeah, I did it all from scratch. Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of us have to rely on professionals for that, or an AI generator of some kind. But right.
That's really popular out there now, like creating art with AI. It's a little scary. It's so scary that it's really good.
It's so good. It's amazing.
Just saying that,
What?
I don't think anyone's actually done like a sprite generator, right? Something which does transparent backgrounds like PNGs, right? It's always like a full picture. I wonder if you could say that, generate me something with a transparent background, and
it's just a matter of math. It's all I see.
just a matter of
is
time.
These layers, these convolutions and devolutions, and oh man, there's a couple of things on. There's the math series. I forget the name, Mathology or something. The YouTube series that actually went into details about how this stuff works, and it's really, really cool. I'll see if I can find it during my chatting.
Please do. I tell you what, another one. Sebastian League does a great one on AI exposure on AI on YouTube, and who was it? I'm going to forget. Anyway, there's some interesting stuff going on. Let's get to questions. We got some questions.
Yes, right.
Questions, guys.
That's it. What is a navigation in terms of app architecture? Is it UI, business logic, app state, something else? What is navigation in terms of app architecture? Where does it fall? I mean, the thing is, I think the problem you're having here is like navigation can be all of this, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. This is what the problem is, right? So navigation, when you're talking in terms of navigation, is in terms of UI. You're talking about maybe your bottom navigation, maybe a side navigation, whatever that is. That's your UI component. But then you've got the business logic that sort of rolls around how you navigate, what navigation buttons to show. Maybe when you're logged in as an admin, you get an extra admin button. That's all business logic. And then you've got managing any app state around it, right? About what page you're currently on. Can you push on the top of another page? There might be app state related to that. So the answer is all of the above, I think.
I agree. I agree because, for example, I think it also falls, like you mentioned, a lot on app state because you need to define where your app is at a given scenario, and then that you can drive your logic based on that. So yeah.
So there is obviously, if you're using something like GoRouter holds its own state, right? It has the Go state stuff, and that also manages the business logic. So that's the whole idea of using that library. So you just do your UI and you hook it up to GoRouter, and it handles the rest of it, right? So in that example, it would just be UI for you, if you're using GoRouter, for example. However, obviously, it gets more complicated. The larger your app, the more complicated navigation gets. And it's very difficult. You have to think about something that gets missing from navigation. I think is not thinking about how the user navigates. So, like most people, their basic navigation stuff is just push, and you get this whole layered stack. And what you do is you'll push the home screen again on top of 5 other screens. And that's not what you should be doing, right? No. You need to have a top level navigation.
That is true.
And whenever you try and go to any of those top level navigation screens, you're clearing the stack and you're returning back to the top. This keeps that stack from getting infinitely deep, which is definitely not what you want. And you don't expect someone to hit back from one of the top level screens. They expect to leave the app because they're in the top level of the app. And when you're navigating an app, that you get to know what screens link to what and how it all navigates, right? And it's another example of like presenting something in a tab, so it's part of that tab when you're on that tab, versus to push something on top of the entire screen. You know that when you go back, you expect to go back to what's behind. So there is actually, if you remember right, there's a great set of documentation from Android about up and back navigation and navigation in general in terms of UI. If I can find it.
And while you look for that, so I've also seen people how they wrap the navigation implementation like inside their, let's say, state management. Because then let's say in case they want to handle like all the logic from like driven by, let's say you're injecting a provider from RiverPie. And then, for example, they create methods around it, like go to this page or go back, or pop until root. So if you want to wrap your implementation around, let's say, your state, it's also feasible. That way, for example, if you decide to replace it with something else, then you don't have to rewrite the whole application and find like every place where you're doing navigator.off or go.router. You could actually wrap it around that. But I personally like what you mentioned, Simon, about like GoRouter, how GoRouter keeps all that kind of like as very declarative. It maintains the state. You know exactly where you are and where you will be based on some logic. Also, how you do nested navigation, and that way you can see exactly where you are. So that could also be considered part of the business logic, pretty much. Yeah.
Yep.
So I found that. Go on.
Oh, go ahead. You go first.
No, I was just gonna say I found the content I've posted in the chat. It's actually quite interesting. Let me just quickly pop it up here on stream if I can get the right size to be effective. I don't know. I'll do. Yeah. So it goes through, like back navigation, how you enter an app, back versus up, deep link, and how you sort of navigate into content, how it stacks. And there's a bunch of stuff over here, like different form factors, handling navigation components, nested graphs. I don't know. There's a bunch of content in here just about app navigation, which is worth looking at.
Yeah, there's also some stuff in the material guidelines at material.io, and there's probably the human interface guidelines for Apple as well that would be applicable here for that sort of stuff. And I just want to follow up by saying I was talking earlier about having this great video about how AI gets generated. I just pasted the link in the chat room for this, and it's wonderful stuff. So check it out. It when you figure out what it's actually doing, it's like, how the heck does that even work? But it works, and it's really remarkable.
Yeah, all this navigation stuff here with material, that's all been posted in the chat. Yeah. So yeah, you've got like lateral navigation, forward navigation, reverse navigation.
Right. Love it.
Yeah, there's I mean, a lot of the time, the key is to use your app out of context, or even better, give your app to someone else and see how they use your app. And if they get confused in where they are, you haven't got it right. Right? And even worse, when you see it being used, you're like, oh, they shouldn't do that.
I hand my application to somebody. I just grab like, hey, can you try using it? And then when I see that, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, bug, let me refactor. Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah. If you have to reply to them and say that's not the way you do that, or you should be doing it this way, you've made it wrong. The UX is wrong because it should be obvious.
Right. And I should emphasize, I think this doesn't get said enough. Google has put a ton of money into research and design for material design. And even if you don't like everything they do, most of what they do for a reason. And although the Flutter docs talk a little bit about, well, how this goes together with that, what you really are missing out on if you haven't started pawing your way through it is the Material.io website, which not only tells you why we do things a certain way, but even gives you cut and paste Flutter code right there to be able to implement that design that you're looking at. Very cool stuff.
Very good point.
I'm gonna
Material.io. Yes.
Before we go to another topic here, I will mention actually one little last thing because we probably do need to go. But yeah, a lot of this is an example. I'm gonna make this bigger. Hope that comes across better. This code example is how not to do it.
That's what I was referring. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I see this all the time. People put the route in the push, which means on every button you're recreating a new route. What you want to do is make a stack. In fact, I did it. If you go look for my navigation talk from Flutter Europe, I keep mentioning that because I've done it all before. But if you just make a static function that returns a route in your song screen widget, then this would turn out to be navigator of push song screen dot route, right? Then the details of how you build around everything stays in with a single responsibility principle. It stays within the song screen, and then all across your app, whenever you want to change your route, however you want to change your routes, that's done in the one place, not all across your app. So yeah, this is great as an example of showing you how a route works, but not how you should do it. So yeah. All right, let's move on. Next question.
Yep.
Randall, do you want to read this one? Do you want to take this one?
Hi, great work, everyone. With regards to using Dart as a backend server on Docker, how can scalability be handled correctly? Handle it correctly.
I mean, firstly, once you've got something on Docker, right?
Yeah.
You can then scale that to multiple containers, multiple instances, or multiple servers. If you're using Cloud Run, for example, in Cloud Run, the settings, you can choose, say, on this amount of CPU usage, create a new unit, scale up to 10 units only, scale down to 1 unit, scale down to no units. And you can decide how you want your instances to be scaled. The problem here is about how you develop. So if let's say, for example, I'll give an example. Let's say Twitter, right? Let's say on Twitter, you go into someone logs into the Twitter software, the Twitter website, and it shows their home news feed, right? That news feed, it will be, once the user first sees it, it'll be cached, and it has to be cached in memory, so that next time the user refreshes the page, it's there immediately, so it doesn't have to go back to the database, right? This is just an optimization example. Now, if that was cached on the single server, if my next request gets delivered to a second server in the scaling group, suddenly it has to go to the database and cache it again. Yeah. This is about how you develop your code to scale. You have to think about your code as being isolated away from the rest of the resource, and the resources and what resources should be scaled separately to your actual code. So in the case I just gave you, you might set up a separate Redis memcache server, and then all the nodes connect to that, and that way all the nodes share the same memcache, right? That's one mechanism. The other one is, in fact, Google actually has a little tick box somewhere in the run configuration, which is called request affinity, I believe. And basically the idea is it knows that the requests come from the same user, so it directs it to the same server. And this means that you can kind of get around some of those problems that way. But the key here is just about scaling is nothing you do magically inside your Dart code normally. You have to think about the way you develop is at scale. And the key about this is if you do this from day one, when you're building something, even a small something. So don't get me wrong, hack something together small, see if your potential of your idea works. But if you your first rewrite should be making it work with scaling, even though if it's not going to scale at the very beginning, because if you don't get, I'm going to show my age here, but the /dot effect, which is when suddenly your website's mentioned on a news article, or your service or your app is mentioned somewhere on someone's live stream, let's say some popular Twitch stream suddenly mentions your app or whatever, and it suddenly gets downloaded a gajillion times, and your server grinds to a halt because it doesn't scale properly. And at that point, everyone uninstalls your app and you never get those customers back again, right? So the whole point about allowing scalability is about having the potential to scale, not necessarily wanting to scale, just to be clear.
And
that's about the backend stuff.
And the good thing about some of the scalability aspects of, let's say, Cloud Run, where, like depending on the amount of traffic, it like auto scales, meaning like it creates multiple instances of Cloud Run. So that's why you need to tie it just with what you said, Simon. You have to architect it well so that it scales well when it increases the amount of, let's say, Cloud Run instances, but then it scales down to 0 when there's no traffic. So some of that aspect of the scalability may be taken care of for you, but don't be fooled if you don't scale it well, let's say, and you don't architect it well when it comes to multiple instances accessing, for example, the same data that you were referring to, for example. Yeah.
I mean, a good example of something that you can be tricked with is, I'll give an example of this. Your backend might be communicating with a database.
Yes.
And you're making separate SQL statements in your code, separate requests.
Correct.
All of those should be in a transaction against the database. And that's just good programming practice. Now in Dart, because everything's single threaded in each ISO, and because you're only testing maybe with a few people, you never see multiple people trying to access the same content at the same time. And the concurrency effect of doing that means that suddenly these requests are coming in at different times and will cause you grief. So yeah, it's more about thinking about, it's really, it's where I come from, multi-threading, it's the same thing, but time is an aspect of your programming. And most people don't think about that. And in fact, what's really nice about Dart is you don't have to think about it because of the nature of the way it works. However, it is a thing in programming, and it does need to be thought about.
Well said.
Let's move on.
Next question.
Oh, yes, the same one.
Oh.
Oops.
I think you guys are trolling us. Come on.
Get X.
Yeah,
Get X, of course.
Get X.
Oh,
Yeah.
God,
Get X.
no.
Yeah.
God, no. Right. You've got to say that. People are literally going to take you seriously. The answer to this is whatever works for you. That's it. Whatever works for you. Try them out. In fact, I'm going to recommend Mike Rydstrom. I'm probably saying his name wrong. He did a little table of showing you how many test cases each one has got, what the performance aspects are like. He's compared all the state management. So just look up Mike compare state management. I'm sure you'll find it on Google. And Flutter state management or something. I don't know, you'll find it. But to be honest, try them. Whichever one you feel comfortable, whichever one you get to know, start using it. That's it.
But ultimately, you'll end up at RiverPod. So you can skip all the intermediate steps.
Seven Mala says, can we use npm package in Flutter Web? Yeah. I mean, if it's a client side, yeah, I guess you can. I mean, like, it's not, remember, npm is Node Package Manager. You're not writing Node server-side JavaScript. You're writing client-side JavaScript. So although you can use npm to download your package, you can do a packages.json in your web folder. You can do npm get or whatever it is to, like, download all the npm update, install, whatever it is, to grab all those packages and put them in the Node modules directory or whatever. And then you can refer to those JavaScript files in your Dart code. You can say, create a script element, add the source from that node element / whatever the thing is, and you can import that JavaScript code. And if you use the JS package, there's a Dart.js package and there's a JS package in Pub. You can then do the interoperability where you can make a Dart class and say everything's external, and then you can just use any of your packages. Yeah, to type.
If you want,
basically this. Just briefly, what I'm talking about making this convention, this thing you do in Dart, it's the same as TypeScript types. So basically, there's normally like @type / something. There's a bunch of TypeScript things, and all you basically do is declaring what the types are in Dart, so it knows how to match it up with JavaScript.
I just want to say that you can take Dart code and put it inside your npm application, and the reason and the great example of this, which I only found out about maybe a year ago, is SAS, SASS. The official source for SAS is Dart now. And Dart, they're in the SAS repo, they talk about how to make this an NPM installable tool. And that's great. So if you want an example of a Google provided, Google developed application that starts life as Dart and ends up as an NPM installable module, there's your man right there. SAS is cool.
It's very sassy.
Yeah, you went there.
Sunlight Pro, would you use the bang operator or scoped type promotion if foo does not equal null and foo bang is active?
No.
Foo.cancel versus final bar equals foo.
You only need that if you can't actually promote that first expression, which is true if foo is a property of the current class, because it can't tell that a subclass might override that and change it to something. It changes values every time it's getted.
So that's yeah. So when you say foo does not equal null in that statement, it's doing a get of the foo member if foo is a member, and then the second time foo dot is active is also doing another get. Now it could be that the two gets return different values. Highly unlikely. Yeah. However, it's possible in complicated situations. We won't go there. But the point here is it's probably nice to always do final bar equals foo and then use bar in your if statement. The nice thing about that is you don't have to use the exclamation mark at that point because it knows that it can never be null, and then you won't ever have to put the exclamation mark, right?
Yeah, and you would even get notified by the Flutter will tell you, like, this is unnecessary to do when you define it as final bar equals foo, because it cannot be null.
I think we're talking about them not happening. Let me just go to quick clarity. Because the expression is evaluated, is two evaluations, multi-threading on Dart doesn't really happen that way, so it's very unlikely. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a foo getter return literally, you could just try this yourself. Make your foo getter inside. Make your foo a getter that returns the value, and just do a math random instance in there, and randomly return null or randomly return the value, and see what happens to your code.
Because I have a video on that. I have a video on that. Hold on, I'll go find it. Yes.
Because that's a good example of when that's the kind of thing that fails. It's not, you know, if your foo is a variable and you know it's not going to be changed, then yeah, you know, that's a case where you could do the first one, right? But then you're kind of working. If someone does in the future change foo to a getter, suddenly your code randomly starts breaking. Now you know why. So, you know, once Randall finds out, well, I guess we'll jump on another question. Unless you want to add anything,
just about. I got to get a share link up. Hold on. Copy.
While he does that, we're going to jump on to the next question.
My own voice is in my ear too. There we go. Got it. Okay, I'll paste it in my link here. So there we go. All right. So that's called the Devious Coin one. If those of you that have been following my Dart and Flutter channel, but the Devious Coin is a fun one. Yeah.
So David says, what is the relationship between declarative routing, deep linking, and dynamic links? They seem to be different words, but mean the same thing. I don't really know.
I thought we talked a little bit about this, about declarative routing. For example, the way between Navigator 1.0 and 2.0 differ is in the fact that one is imperative and the other one is declarative. So, for example, Go Router, which uses declarative routing, you see kind of like how you define the state of your navigation, and then you declare it like that. You kind of like is very in line with the way that Flutter works, in a very declarative fashion. Deep linking refers to then the fact that you can, for example, navigate to, let's say, to a screen that may be a couple of levels deep, and then you can get to that screen or that location with one single, let's say, one single command. Like you could just deep link into that. So that's why I say, like, maybe these are not the same thing. They may refer to, like, people may think that they may refer to the same thing, but they're not the same thing. It's just that maybe they could be used in conjunction.
But dynamic. As I was going to say, just to be clear, just to know the differences. Declarative routing is something that you do in your code in your app. Deep linking is external links to your app. So something external, let's say in a browser or another application, communicates into your application that they want to navigate somewhere inside your app. It could just be the top level, but it could also be somewhere deep within your deep. So the idea of deep linking, think of it like a catalog. You might have a product detail screen. So normally what you do is someone opens up a link to a product. You then, inside your app, you navigate them to the home screen, the category screen, then the product. And they just see the product screen. And when they hit back, they go back to the category screen, then they go back to the home screen, then they leave the app, right? But deep linking is that notion of something external going into the app. And then dynamic links is an implementation of deep linking that's made by Firebase, made by Google. And that has the added bonus that it works across iOS and Android. The idea being is that they support this kind of notion of, if you don't have the app installed and you tap on a deep link, it will go to the Play Store if you're on an Android device and suggest that you install it. If you tap on a deep link and you're on iOS, it will go to the iOS App Store to suggest you install it if you don't have it installed. Otherwise, it will launch the app and go to the content. It's a whole round implementation that's free. And that's dynamic links. There are other services out there that actually do offer this, the same sort of thing. But in general, if you've got the app installed and they click on the link, it opens up something in the app. A simple way of doing that is, deep linking. You just set up the standard Android stuff, and then there's a pub package, and it's just escaped me what the name of it is. That's going to bug the hell out of me. All right, I'm going to go quickly find that. You carry on talking about this.
Yeah, but again, that if anybody's asking, like, what's the relationship, that is the relationship. You can define deep links as part of your declarative routing to denote that, let's say, in order for me to navigate to this particular page, I can do it via a deep link. And then that way from the outside, an application can launch like a given screen, and then you can even pass parameters and whatnot. But I'm not too familiar with dynamic links. I actually like the explanation that you gave, Simon, on that. So that's awesome.
I found the package. It's actually called Unilinks. It's been around a long time. It's short for Universal Links, which is a name for so app links is what it's called on Android. Universal Links or custom URLs are what's called on iOS. They've got slightly different names, but then this is just like a little package which basically shows you what you need to do on your native packages to implement it, and then inside your Flutter app, you simply do in your sort of setup of whatever your widget is, get initial link to get the one that was launched with, and if your app is currently running, you might have to also listen to the links, because if your app is running in the background, it gets brought to the foreground and then your link is delivered to you, and that's what that does. And it's nice and simple. It does the job. It also works with HTTP links and not necessarily custom schemas as well. Hopefully, David, that helps solve your problem. I guess we're on to the next one. I have HTML content. If not using scroll but paging, how can I split this content into pages? I have HTML content. If not using scroll but paging, how can I split this into pages?
Is it HTML being consumed inside of a Flutter web application, or?
I'm wondering if I'm thinking like web view, right? But he wants
like a web view.
He wants the web view to go horizontally across the screen, like almost like columns, like a newspaper, maybe. So like not to scroll vertically like a web page would normally do, but display that across. And the answer is you got a very hard time if you're trying to do that. So the problem here is that HTML content is just not delivered to work that way. What you can do, and the best way you can do this is in CSS, you can actually set up columnar layouts. They actually flows. Okay, yeah. HTML in the widget. Well, I'm assuming you mean web view. Let's just say that. I'm assuming you mean, I'll bring the question back up. Just assuming you mean web view. What I would probably do is make up my own scrollable widget that is scrollable. And inside scrollable, you can use a custom viewport. And this enables you to listen to the viewport scroll event and move your own content on the screen. And what you can do is say, I want 4 pages, and just measure the width of the screen times 4, make your web view that big. And then inside your CSS, you say, I want 4 columns, and it will lay it out 4 screens worth of content for you. And then when you scroll inside Flutter, you can have it move the web view to each of the pages like a page view. In fact, if you just add page physics to the scrollable, it will have the same like scrolling behavior as a page view. Not ideal because it has to load all the content off the screen as well, and you have to put a limit on it, right? Because again, it's very hard to measure how much the layout's going to be consumed by the HTML content. So you would have to give it, but that would be the best thing I could assume if you're trying to like flow horizontally across the screen with HTML. Sadly, this is the problem with HTML, right? Like it's its own rendering engine. You might be better off not using HTML content. Again, like, I don't know what you're using the HTML content for, but again, if you worked your own like JSON feed, which had like, text, paragraph, bold, whatever, like some basic blocks, then you could choose to lay them out and have them flow into multiple columns and you get more control. But because if it's just HTML content, you've got no control over that layout. And you have to start doing JavaScript to talk to what's happening inside the browser to get the width of something, and it just gets really complicated and it gets slow. And
I've actually done it the way that you mentioned, Simon, and I'm just going to add this, Leah. So I had that case where I wanted to consume HTML inside of a Flutter application. So then what I decided to do was in the JSON that I was getting the content, I was actually, one of the fields actually HTML. But then I chunked up the content to split it into multiple requests or multiple, let's say, JSON documents. Then I was able to split it into multiple pages and do like pagination. It was something similar to that. But like you say, you're going to have to rely on either chunking up the data or, like you say, having to do like a lot of manipulation like of HTML and whatnot. So there are multiple ways to mitigate it. But yes. Yeah.
And this is the widget I was talking about. This is the base class that all widgets that scroll implement. So you can see here, it says list view, grid view, custom scroll view. They all use this, okay? And in fact, it has an of method, so you can do scrollable.of. There's some interesting things you can do when monitoring the current scroll. But basically, all of the scroll stuff works through this, and it has a builder, what's called a viewport builder. And then you get given this viewport offset, which you can cache. And viewport offset is a change notifier, and it will be notified when the scroll changes, right? And inside here, you get the new pixel offset of the scroll. That's the key. And then finally, you've also got, where is it? Viewport. And viewport can also help you sort of like adapt your machinery of how you display a set of slivers, for example, and some other things. But honestly, if you're just trying to do it, you could just go with a scrollable with a web view inside and a bit of logic around how you're watching the scroll, and it should work just fine. Hopefully that helps.
Next question.
Is there any way to detect which screen under when an alert dialog pops up on the app screen? So what you're asking is saying which is the route that's pushed below my current route? And the answer to that is, well, you can simply pass that on. So when you launch your alert dialog, you just launch the widget. Well, you can get the current route and give it to the alert dialog. Now the alert dialog will know what was underneath it. That's one obvious way. And to get the current route from the current context, it's modal route.of, and that will give you the current route page or whatever. Yeah, so just I'm just bringing that up. But
I've done that by keeping like some sort of like a little bit of metadata when it comes to the screen that actually launched or where the alert launched from. But the model.route.of gives you that some of that information as well. You can get it out of the settings.name, and then you can get the information on the route. So
these are the top level routes that most people have: page route, material route, Kubernetes route, all implement page route, all implement modal route, and modal route. Also pop-up routes, which are your dialogues, also all those that implement modal route. So it all comes down to being modal route, and modal route has oops, I've gone to pop-up route. And modal route has an of method from context to give you the current one that you're in. So modal route of gives you the current route. Now you can, here's the thing, we're talking about this. So if you're using Navigator 2, it supports looking and observing the current page stack. So that's dependent on your implementation that you're using. So GoRouter has a way of doing it, probably Route Master, probably Router V, and there's several Navigator 2 packages. They should let you look at the current stack, and you can say -2 or something in the array, find me what the current route is. But to be honest, if you're trying to look at what would launch your screen, just pass it over. Get the current one and pass it over. Start your alert dialog with an enum. Whenever you launch it from a screen, pass it what screen it came from.
That's exactly how I've done it. Like, just maintain a little bit of metadata from where that alert got launched, and then that way you can refer to it. Yeah.
And this is part of the protocol about dealing with routing is the thing you're routing to and the thing you're routing from need to cooperate. I see so many people do like, well, how come I can't return a value from pop until? And it's like, well, how do you force a value down the throat of something that wasn't waiting for a value? You know, you can't do that. You get both ends of the routing need to agree with each other about what's actually being handed off in this routing step.
It also surprises me, like there's no reason why you couldn't have something be like have state. That's because it's not the UI that should be holding the pushing your routes is one thing. The state is separate, right?
Yeah.
Your application state is separate, so you can just set a value there, and when you return, has that value changed?
That's
yes.
exactly.
Okay. Now do something, right? Like, yeah. Anyway, hope that helps.
Next question.
We did our best.
Roman, do you want to take this one? Read it? I don't know.
How to image background using Flutter without API? I need to remove image background using Flutter automatically. Are we talking about setting an image as a background of a, for example, like it says without API?
I'm not sure what he means, to be honest.
Yeah.
How to image background with using Flutter without API. I need to remove image background. Oh, hang on a minute. I know what he's doing. He wants to do the thing which cuts. Let's say you're on the stream here, Roman, and you want to cut the blue out from your background. How do you do that without going off to an API? How to remove the image background using Flutter, but without calling
Math.
an API. I need to
Math.
remove the image background.
Lots
using
of
Flutter
math.
automatic.
I thought you were going to use the there's a isn't there a widget that gives you like the what is it like you can do
you can do a fill with transparent, right?
Well,
can't you do fill and have it do a color flood with transparent? I think you can do that.
So the problem you're asking is this. I think there might actually be. I feel like you probably want to look at the TF Lite. That's the TensorFlow Lite models. I think there's actually some green screen TensorFlow Lite models which do the background removal for you, and there's actually a TF Lite package for Flutter, so you can actually have it automatically run that for a widget or for a.
And there's a poor man's way of doing it. I think there's a color filter widget and like a one that you can implement like a mask. But again, that's only for like static and only fixed.
Yeah, the problem with
Craig's
there you go. There. Yeah, which is what I was talking about, Google ML, and it's
there you go, of course, yeah.
There's also Firebase ML, which is I think is it Firebase ML? There's a thing for that now, and I would go look around, but basically it's the machine learning models, right? So you've got Google ML, Firebase ML, whatever it is, and that kind of leads into TensorFlow Lite. And the thing is, if you're trying to do it on device, you're not using the ML APIs, which is Google and Firebase are ML APIs. But if you ship a TF Lite model, that's normally like a few megabyte like model file into your assets in your Flutter project, you can then use the TF Lite package to process it on device. I mean, the thing is, you can also like look at it yourself and go, how would I achieve this? And the answer is the way it's actually done is you read the red, green, blue of each pixel. And you go, which is the color I'm trying to match? How close is it? And then you have like a multiplier, right? 0 to 1. And you go, how close is it in relation? That's your sort of your break point. And if it's less than this, make it transparent. If it's greater than that, keep the pixel color. Now that's literally how these algorithms work, more or less, right? They're a bit more complicated, but the point here is that if that's just color replacement, right? But yeah, if you're just trying to do like magical background removal, then they need to understand what's foreground, what's background. That's a more complex proposition. But yeah, hopefully that helps.
Simon, I think we have to make a decision here. It's getting close to the top of the hour.
Yeah, cut off then.
Okay, that's it. So no more questions, people. Thank you. Come back in 167 hours and get in early.
That is next week for those of you that don't know.
Right. If you can't do the math,
It says here, extension of previous question. Like background remover website is one. I need to remove the image background using Flutter, which we just said. So that's good. All right. Question decoded. I think Randall, just on the side here. Randall, there is a bit to answering questions online when you answer them in like these forums and things, which is decoding the question, right?
Yeah.
Kind of putting yourself in the mindset of the developer and going, what problem are they actually trying to solve? Because sometimes people ask a question about, how do I go from one screen to another? When the answer is, you shouldn't be doing that in the first place. What are you actually trying to achieve? Like, and you know what I mean? Like, go out a level. You know. Anyway,
I like to say it as every problem is a solution to another problem, but you've got to know both levels when you're answering the question.
Yeah. How to hide API key in the code? Well, I mean, we've answered this before. I mean, normally you shouldn't have to hide an API key in your code. They are publicly, you give them in your app to the client. And at some point, if someone wants to take your APK or your file and look at what's inside, they can eventually going to find it no matter what you do, because you have to decrypt it to send it or decode it to send it to the server, right? If they monitor the network traffic, they're going to see it, right? So just to be the key is, yes, you can hide it. That helps protect in terms of by obscurity, you're obscuring it. But it's not the end protection. You need to have a good rule about rotating your API keys, right? Once every 6 months, once every month. I don't know how popular your thing is, once a year, but you should be rotating those API keys, right? Making sure that they're changing all the time if you don't want someone to steal and use it. However, if you're talking about Google services, they say on the back end, you set up the in Google Cloud Credentials, you can set up the protections. You can say only these Android apps can access it, only these iOS apps, only these websites can access this. And that gives you, again, another level of protection. That is, someone just can't use your API key in their app. Right?
So what you do is actually you make it harder for people to get to it. So you obfuscate your code. So you give it a little hard for them to get to it. You also you can now, for example, Firebase implemented Firebase App Check, which only traffic coming from your application can get to those things. So even the great Puff also mentions it. Like, we ship API keys with our code. So you just try to make it hard for them to do it. So all of those things that Simon mentioned, plus, obfuscating your code, making sure that you, in the APIs, you specify that from certain domains is where you're at, where the requests are coming from, Firebase App Check and whatnot. Those are great things to implement.
I'll keep it quick. Hopefully you can follow this. I'll give you a quick explanation. So you want to pre-process your API key. That is, make a little script separate to your app that processes your API key.
Correct.
And the simplest thing is, it literally could be just a simple main function that says print whatever the string is, code points, map for each. Take the value of the code point, XOR it with whatever number you want, XOR each value with 20, whatever. Pick a number, 0 to 255. And then do .toString at the end, or I think it's string from code points or something.
Yeah.
And you now make a string that's gobbledygook,
because
it's gone through XOR, and that's like the simplest way of protecting. Then you just do that same process again inside your app, and it'll convert it back to the original, because XOR goes both ways. And that's the simplest form of obfuscation you can offer. But go look up XOR. I mean, honestly, it's simple. But the nice thing about that is, they have to literally look at the code. The idea of doing this, they literally have to look at the code, how it's decrypting, and then they have to essentially debug and breakpoint after it's decrypted to see what it was, right? You can't do static analysis. You can't say, give me the strings from the app, because it will just be gobbledygook. They won't see the string. These are the protection. Anyway,
a quick digression. Just people look for the XOR operator in languages like Dart for Booleans, and it's simple. It's the not equals operator. If false, not equal false, that would be false. So that's XORs to false. Is exactly right. It's always right to use not equals to do the XOR operator.
Yeah,
it works.
If you're trying to do a bitwise XOR, it's the Chinese hat one, which is like the up arrow on your keyboard. What's it? On mine, it's above number 6. There you go. I can't remember what you call that. What is the name for that?
Caret. In
no,
the
but
US.
caret is caret.
No.
Whatever.
That's
okay,
in the US, that's a caret. Yes.
Whatever. We'll say that. Okay, go for it. Next question.
Keep going. Yeah.
Using Navigator 1, is there a reliable way to pop a pushed page? Pop sometimes closes a drawer, sometimes a dialog act. Is there a fail-safe, fail-proof silver bullet way to pop the activity? Well, first, we don't have activities, but I get what you're saying. The screen. Yeah, just do pop. I think the problem here is you're again not being responsible. Like, again, I don't know how you're doing your navigation. Like, I see what your problem is, and you can do like pop twice, right? Pop the navigation, then pop the page if you want to do that, right? You can also do, I think the clear thing is you can do pop until. And in pop until, you give it a predicate, and inside that predicate, you get the route, and you can say, "Is the route settings name one of my top level?" Then stop popping. Now you're going to pop everything on top until you get to the bit that you want to stop at. You can actually do your own routes that extend, let's say, page route builder or material page route builder, whatever it is, and that can be called main activity route. And then you can just look at the type of the route. Is in pop until the route is of type main activity route, right? Yeah, the idea is you can identify what your current route is, and the predicates let you control when to pop. So yeah, navigator of context pop until is what you want to look into. Does that help? Hopefully it does.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Clause, any good tips, links on getting started using API authentication? And for instance, management of the bearer token. I don't have any good links of getting started.
Are they trying to roll out their own API authentication? Yeah.
I think the thing is here, right? First of all, using API authentication is just, as you said. I think so. This I've seen this before, right? So you've got bearer token, which is OAuth, where your tokens expire, and then you need to roll in like a way of renewing the token as part of your request. And normally you do that with like an interceptor. There's DO interceptors. You can just put that in your base method for making your HTTP call. There's a ton of ways of doing that. I've not seen any guides of this, and probably I should. I've done it multiple times. Probably should do something. When you talk about also managing your bearer token, I'm also thinking of how do you store it? How do you securely store it? A lot of people use like Flutter secure storage, which is just, I think it's just pointless. It doesn't really give you much. It depends on the platform, a bunch of other things. But I think the key is just store it in the local app directory, which is private for the app. So, it's encrypted, it's kept private to the app. So yeah, you can just make a JSON file or a text file or whatever and stick it in there. Trying to use a website's auth and then the API on that site, in an app?
You're just saying that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming so. And again, it's the same thing. Yeah. Like it's like Twitter has an auth 2 API, and then you need to, connect to it and then manage a bearer token. So normally they give you it depends on the API, but normally they give you a access token and a refresh token, and your access token expires on the hour. Maybe it only lasts an hour. And then when you come back, if the token's expired, or you try and make a request the token expired, then you go make a call to their refresh token endpoint with the refresh token, and then it gives you back a new access token, and you keep that process going. And then you just store it on disk, the token, so you can use it next time they launch the app. That's it, I think. The refresh token normally expires after like 30 days, and that's the idea, right? You keep an access token refreshing locally so it can be forcefully expired to the refresh token, so the access tokens, it can't generate a new one. And then the refresh token expires every 30 days, meaning that it might have to log back in every 30 days, but you're also maybe given a new refresh token within that time period. So yeah, hopefully that helps. All right.
We try.
I'm a backend developer. Recently, I decided to switch to app development using Flutter. What projects do you suggest to catch HR and headhunters' eye? What should I do to get a job in Flutter? Now, the question I'd say, Mia, here, but my first thing, sorry, I'm just going to jump in here, is saying, do you want to use your Dart knowledge? Do you want to use your backend developer knowledge on doing Dart on the back end?
Good point.
Because that would get you an immediately jump into the space, right? Like Dart running Dart code in the backend environment, as we would have had questions today on Docker and Dart in the background, is a big growing thing. There's lots of packages. It's a growth audience. Because you've got knowledge in that field, bringing it to Dart and knowing how to do these things in Dart that I've previously done in other languages, that might be a great selling point, right? To say you do a full stack Dart in the background, you're all this kind of stuff, you're used to all these different APIs, that might be a good sell. But on the other side of this, if you're moving to app development because you want to move out of backend and you want to do Flutter now with UI, well, what should he do? Roman.
Well, I mean, it's all about like what you feel maybe identified with, something that you want to, you're passionate about. People say like, oh yeah, we should do like a line of business application because that may be more in line to what the industry is looking out there. But maybe are you targeting maybe a specific company or you just, sorry about that. So if you just want to do like a blanket statement on like, okay, maybe if you're looking at a job at Twitter, you could build then a social media app in Flutter and stuff like that. You want to maybe be in line with that, but then that probably would narrow it down to just a certain amount of companies. Just, I would say, build something that you're proud of, that you feel identified with, and, that you're passionate about, and just build cool stuff and put it out there. Build a little portfolio, some applications out there, but something that truly leverages, or actually something that truly exposes your talents. Like, okay, I'm really good at this. Like if you're really good at backend development, or you want to build packages, that's another route that you can go into, and then you can build like more packages for the Flutter ecosystem. That's a way to go about that.
And I can speak personally to this particular strategy simply because I spent years doing back-end work with Perl. But what I was doing during the great web transition of the 90s and 2000s was building great websites that had Perl as a backend. So I already had the UI UX experience stuff from writing good websites that Perl was generating all server side. So when I came to Flutter, I was able to bring a lot of that knowledge with me. And so I completely understand how to design the backend APIs. I completely understand how to do the front end rendering, initially with Perl generating HTML, but now with Flutter just generating widgets. And so there is a transition process there. But again, it's all about experience and being able to demonstrate the experience and being able to, talk the talk and walk the walk when you get interviewed.
Somebody said, sorry that you were doing Perl.
I saw that. I created the Perl world in a sense. I wrote the top 5 selling books on Perl. I created the world's largest Perl training company. I made www on the side of a bus. That was me. So yeah, I did. Oh, I can't hear Simon.
Oh, he's mute. I can speak into that question. Is there a way to access local? Oh, here we go. There you go. Go, Simon. Go.
No, I was just reading the question. Go on, you can read the question.
Okay, so is there a way to access local storage through a Flutter web app? I want to be able to store, access photos on a user's computer instead of in the cloud. Yes, I know for sure you can access local storage from a Flutter web app. You can talk to, and it's very easy. It's almost like the same way that you access, for example, like on a regular web application, you talk to the local storage, and you can set like keys and set values and whatnot.
API.dart.dev over here on the left, .html, your index.db. If you go .html, type local storage. There you go.
Now, the second part of that question is about accessing the user's local file system. You can definitely from Flutter Web, you can access the local storage, like, session storage, local storage. But then when you're talking about, let's say, oh, I want to access the user's file system, like pulling photos and stuff like that. So, but that's not part of the local storage from like the local storage that I know on the web. So if you want to access,
But if I want to be able to store and access photos on a computer. So the way you do that in web is that you basically do content deposition attachment.
Exactly.
Go look up that one. It's content deposition, and you basically you're faking a URL with some image data, and you can do that with what's called a data URL. If you want to do it from JavaScript to the client side, or from the server side, you just send back content deposition attach as a HTTP header, and you can go look into the details. There's lots of details. That's how you force a download onto the person's computer. If you're trying to open up files, you can use image picker library that supports web, and there's also a file picker library as well, which I'm not sure if supports web or not yet, but again, that lets you pick a file, and then you can open up the contents in your JavaScript and then go from there. Go on, what were you saying?
Kevin had a couple notes about what you're just saying.
I don't think this is exposed in Flutter yet. What is? Because
whatever you were saying.
I've done it using like sockets. So I've actually connected to the local file system via sockets. Like I've done like some tricks. But
there's some tricks. I mean, if you weren't hosting your app online, then you're essentially running on a local machine. So then you can have a little server. This is how a lot of Node apps work. They start a little Node server on a local host port, and then you could just access that from your local website.
Yeah,
and
that's what I've done. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, you definitely can access the content from So Kevin's saying that there's a native file system API is not exposed to Dart HTML.
Oh,
I've
interesting.
not even heard of native file system API.
Me neither.
I think
That's
that's a new one. But
Looking
yeah,
into it.
you can definitely, as he just mentioned, you can definitely you can access it via JS interrupt, which means you can just write the Dart wrappers with external keyword, and then you can access any content from the browser. But of course, maybe only local recent browsers support that. So you start getting when you start going web, you start getting this realm of there might not be support for your particular feature of the browser. It's not like I mean, all platforms are like this. New features come around, but it's definitely not like a native platform where here's the file system, here's all this stuff. Like the whole idea of web is limited in scope, it's sandboxed on purpose, and then they're revealing more and more of that API surface. But the problem here is if they, let's say, camera API, right, whatever that is on web, I forgot what it's called. They could W3C or WhatWG, the two groups that do web standards. They come up with the interface and the expectations of JavaScript. They define how it should work. But now all the browser vendors have to implement it. They all have to implement it the same way, and they don't. They have some bugs here and some bugs there. So it's a slow moving thing, right? That's just what I say. Yeah, just be warned. You have been warned. Dragons like that.
Yeah.
What is the best way to download a big zip file in Flutter Web?
Use a big zipper.
Like I mean, so there's what was that? It's not. It's a. Well, it all depends on what you're trying to do because Are you trying to download it for use in Flutter Web, or are you just trying to download it to the user's computer? Because there's two separate things there, right? And it kind of revolves around what I was just saying. You can use the JavaScript APIs to actually go fetch what's called a blob of data. What was the thing? There's like a blob get or something, and you can basically I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically you can actually get the data from a URL into JavaScript and actually work with that data. So you can actually kind of start managing that, and then you can decode the zip with the zip decoder in Dart, and you can do it all inside JavaScript, and it would be massively heavy on the browser. Let's say you're downloading a 2 gigabyte. This is what happens. In fact, what was that? There used to be like some of those downloading sites where you download like zip files. I can't remember. There was one. Anyway, they started doing it, so they download it into the browser and then it downloads. So you have to stay on their webpage to see the ads whilst they're downloading and stuff like that. It's like a common thing now.
But isn't there like a way to like download a file as
Mega. What is it? Mega. Mega.co.nz or whatever it is. New Zealand. Mega upload. Yeah, and all that. They start doing this. But basically, yeah, they download into the browser's memory. But it means if you're trying to download the 2 gigabyte file, let's say, you're downloading it into your browser's browser tabs JavaScript heap. So suddenly your heap, but that's what happens, right? If you're processing a bunch of things, like let's say you're processing images, even with TensorFlow or whatever inside your browser, you're doing it all inside the heap, and it's super duper expensive. It's not just like this many bytes; it's this many bytes plus so much overhead because it's in JavaScript, right? So just be warned, you don't probably want to be doing that, but it can be done. Whether you should, the user may not like you, but especially if they have to do it multiple times and you don't manage it properly. So just big stuff you do with big data, like when I say big data, that's megabytes, right? That's millions, right? Like kilos, thousands, tens of thousands. These are hundreds of thousands even. These are units you can normally manage pretty fine. Start going to millions of bytes and gigabytes and terabytes. You need to think about your memory usage. Like memory is not infinite. Right. Anyway, I'll move on now. I do hop on. Go on. Oh, yeah. They just extended it from big file from Firebase storage. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Same thing.
Yeah. Again, though, it's not. Again, it's not clear on what you're trying to do with it if you're trying to use it in your browser. But if you're trying to use it in the browser, there is download blob stuff. I can't remember what it's called in JavaScript that does it into memory, and then you can capture it from that. and process it, do whatever you want to do. And there's also just like downloading with deposition attachment. You can actually put the headers on your Firestore. It's called metadata on Firebase storage. And you can add extra headers, including content deposition attachment. And when someone tries to access the URL, it will open up a download box for them to download it. It is common to say about Flutter widgets tree. Is it common to say about Flutter widgets? Some people emphasize that it isn't correct, assuming the tree has an actual data structure. Should a true Flutter expert say widget tree? Huh?
Yeah. Do you have a chart that goes with this, or some foldouts or something? I don't.
Some
quite
people
follow.
emphasize that it isn't correct, assuming the tree as an actual data structure. Should a true Flutter expert? It doesn't. You call it whatever you want. I don't think it makes that much difference. I mean, the thing about language is, as long as I say it and you understand what I mean, then that's great. We communicated. If someone says data tree and you say widget tree, who cares?
Right.
The widget tree is, when it links the widgets together, it is a tree structure, right? You have children. You have children. Now you got a one-to-many relationship, right? Like
you have nodes, you have leaves, you have like nested trees. Yeah, of course. Widget tree is a widget tree, and there are three. Remember the element, the render, and the widget tree, the render tree, and the element tree.
Yeah.
The element tree,
and you have these context links
and the render tree together.
Yes.
And there's plenty of articles about the three trees and lots of videos on YouTube and all sorts. You can find out about that. But
one ring to rule them all.
Right. One ring to rule them all. Oh, we're running over time here. Shoot.
Yeah, way over time.
I'm way over time here. I might have to dash in a second because I'm late actually.
So don't.
Can we make clickable URL emails file link in HTML widgets? Can we make clickable email file? Yes. I want to download file.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
In HTML.
Well, you may not be able to because you asked the point here is we can.
I mean, you can just output a anchor element in a HTML element widget, and you can do whatever you want with it.
Correct.
That would be what I suggest. We're going to zip through these last ones. Have we been adding more ones to the list, or did we actually get to the end?
No, I cut it off. I cut it off.
All right. There is an issue with the image picker package. There is an issue with the image picker package on Android. There is always a possibility that the app will be killed when using it. Yes. There's not an issue with it. It actually has a function to retrieve the one from if it was cancelled during running it. Go look at Image Picker API. It actually has a function called like I'm just going to look it up. Like get expired, something or other. I know it's there.
But the part that says there is always a possibility that the app will be killed when using it, meaning the application will crash or something.
No. So what happens is, let's say, I'll give an example. Your app launches the image gallery to pick the image, right? The image gallery tries to do a lot of memory, so the phone frees up the previous activity, which is your Flutter app. Then what happens is it returns back the result in image to your Flutter app. Your Flutter app relaunches, which it should do. This is perfectly exactly how it should do. Your Flutter app should be restoring its state to where it was. And then that's literally, I made a whole talk about restoring state. There's restorable int, there's restorable everything in Flutter. And then the actual image widget itself, and let's bring this up here, the image picker actually has in its API, I think this actually says it down here probably as well. They are. Look, handling main activity instruction in Android. Retrieve lost data. It's literally it's literally it's there in the documentation. Okay, called retrieve lost data.
Pretty cool.
There you go. So it's designed for that purpose. You can work around it. This is not a problem with Image Picker. This is just all Android apps. This is how Android works. The reason is explained up, but can't find a way. You don't find a way around it. You make it work within your app.
Yeah.
Paco, are there more examples of Toyota's embedder in the works? We're not from Toyota. Couldn't say.
Straight up. Straight up.
We don't
I
know.
mean, that's it, right? You're asking us about Toyotas and better. I'm like, well, we don't work for Google. We're not part of this. We're not part of Toyota.
Get
Is
on
there
their
something in the works? I hope
Friday's
there is.
Q&A show. Get on their Friday's Q&A show that Toyota's doing, and you'll find out all the answers to that.
I use
There's
Flutter
one of
underscore
those.
download. I use official package example, but there is not a progress bar updated in UI main thread. Even they use Iceland. Can you review example Flutter download package GitHub?
No.
Not really at the moment. I mean, you can definitely like monitor the download. I mean, like you get, if you get a stream of bytes, you can just count the bytes based on how many you expect there to be, and then that gives you your progress. I'm pretty sure it does a stream. Roberto, welcome back again for another week. Should I use a global key to use a method inside a child widget, vice versa, parent widget? Yes, you can use the global key to refer to widgets.
Global keys.
It's the correct way of doing it because the widget might actually get ripped apart and replaced when it rebuilds. So the global key allows you to refer to the same state object on multiple instances of the widget when it gets recreated. So yes, there's a bunch of ways. Like if you're going up to the parent, if you're using the direct parent, you can just go widget.parent and cast it to the other state or whatever it is. I think you can also do context.ancestor state of type and just pass it the state of the parent, and you can just immediately get it from the parent. One thing a lot of things do is a child registers with a parent, so it tells the parent, here I am, and it gives it a reference to the child's state. It can save that in a list, and then you can just iterate over that list to get to each one of the children. There's several ways of doing that without using global keys, because you don't really want to maintain like an array of global keys. It kind of like you might as well just have the direct reference. If you're going to have the global key is there to make it abstract, right? But if you're talking about two tightly coupled widgets, have them communicate directly. I'm just powering through this just so we can get to the end.
Yeah.
Very late.
Yes.
I want to remove an image. Can you tell me any public? This is the same.
This is the same as before. The same reference for the image.
Yeah. Next.
You have to Google around. Techist. How to detect the offline if data connection on, but data not received. Okay. The problem you've got here is the problem that all mobile apps have, and that is you may be connected to a network, but you may not have network accessibility, right? So it's like I could be connected to a Wi-Fi network, but the Wi-Fi network may be blocking this device because it hasn't signed up with the sign-up page or something, or paid the money, whatever it is, in which case your app tries to make connections and it doesn't work. So the way you do this is normally have an endpoint on your server called status or online, and you set a very short timeout on your future that does the request, the HTTP request. So you set that to very small, and then when your app starts up, you detect if you're online, you make a request to the status endpoint. If it doesn't get through within the time period, you're offline still. If it gets through, you get back to your status 200 or whatever you expect from the server, you're online. That's the way you deal with that. You actually have to make a connection. Sadly, that's the truth of the matter. If they're behind like a what's called firewall or all sorts of other different mechanisms, like you can be connected to the network but not have credit, all sorts of fun things like that. There's just the ways to make a connection. If it times out and doesn't make a connection, then you're not online or you're not able to connect to the server. So you can do this thing where when anyone, you can also not do that and just have any one of your transactions fails with a timeout to put the app into an offline state. And it's not until they go back online with the network connectivity, the app launches up again, you try again, and then we go back into an online state. And you can kind of toggle and persist it. That's another option. Have a play around. Definitely offline. There's also a great talk from Salih, I think, called Offline First. For Salih.
Yeah.
I think there's go look for Offline First Flutter, and I'm sure you'll find some great talks about that as well.
Yep.
Right, we got to the end.
Woohoo!
Yay!
I'm only running over into some time that I'm meant to be spending on another live stream. So, people are probably hating on me right now, so I'm going to need to dash. So we're going to call it an end. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Roman, for joining us to answer questions. And welcome back anytime. Yeah, and we'll see you again next week. Sorry for the rush, but bye.
Happy Thanksgiving for the
Take
people.
care, guys.
in the
Happy
US.
Thanksgiving, y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yep.